Yeah. And so, let's just say, I am not welcome in that town again. But,
So, weren't you talking about the new Aurality, Phil, before we...
oh, yeah. Yes, the new Aurality, yes, that's where we're getting at. So the new Aurality is this idea that, and this new Aurality is in, A-U-R-A-L-I-T-Y. But it's this mode of, using the classic oral or audio, a human audio vote mode of storytelling or composition. And what basically the idea is that Self gets at in one of our articles, it's the idea that what this new oral form starts, especially in what we would call the new oral storytelling within the technological age, within modern technological age, is that what this new form of storytelling or composition, like you see ones with like the Moth Project in New York City, which includes the celebrities like Salman Rushdie, Fred Armisen, along with more what you could almost call local heroes like New York City firefighters during 9/11. Some of the more sensational topics and people involved. On the flip side, you have the things like out of Boise, Idaho, like Story Night, where those are local people within the community talking about things that the community themselves specifically recognize and can relate to. And then you have a project like StoryCorps, which operates with NPR to project these very personal stories into the rest of the world. And so she's saying that what these projects and these type of storytellings and these type of compositions provide is, in a sense, an inclusion into a new type of rhetorical inquiry. And so I think that's more important than ever. And I think this should be more and more embraced.
I agree with you. I think there's some danger in by including. I think the only thing we need to worry about is by including these other forms of composition into like the discipline of composition. I worry that they'll fall under the same sort of exclusive, rather than being inclusive, they'll fall under the same sort of exclusive rubrics that we use to assess written work, say. So in other words, a Facebook post or a tweet does not really correspond or conform to the expectations of writing in an academic classroom, which isn't to say that those aren't valid points of self-expression, but just that I worry that by including these new kinds of compositions into the classroom, it's actually going to further, quote-unquote, colonize these forms, these modes of expression, by the institution will colonize these modes of expression.
Seth, and while I see your point there, I mean, you're a fan of Peter Elbow, correct?
Of course.
I mean, we are compositionists.
We are indeed.
So Peter Elbow, the Peter Elbow, he even agrees with what Cindy Self says, where in his latest book, The Vernacular Eloquence, is that he goes into how that so much of what seems to be valued, both academically, in a sense, then it seems to maybe be overly valued outside of academia, even outside the classroom, are this speech or textual form that isn't really true to the speech, the voice, the vernacular that would truly capture the emotion and the rhetoric, the core rhetoric.
I think this is one of the great advantages of multimodal composition, all the colonization stuff notwithstanding. I think that by attending to multimodal compositions, we can see so clearly just how restrictive traditional alphabetic compositions are. That the idea that a student can express some truth about themselves in a documented argument or research paper, I think is really exposed to be, very problematic by the inclusion of compositions in multiple modes, because those kinds of truths are very, very, very different than the kinds of truths that get expressed in traditional alphabetic texts.
Well, and that's where I ultimately I think we have to come and embrace these new ones. And this one, I think I'm being more specific here with the type of multimodal. Again, I'm focusing on the new orality forms, like the moth, like story night, like StoryCorps, is because I really think that is a way for communities and things like that to become involved with storytelling and composition. And in that sense, it forms for a bridge, if you will, or some type of link that could connect with the inside the classroom, inside that learning space, with outside the classroom, which is a problem we seem to be facing more and more now, where seems, especially within the arts and humanities, this divide between classroom and outside the classroom. So in my mind, the new orality type compositions do, in fact, help bridge that gap in a way that's more important than ever.
There's no question that kitten videos, say, on YouTube, you have much wider exposure than anything a student is going to write in English 111. And so the potential for dissemination, the potential for actual ethical social change or social justice only increases with the increasing a student's ability to use all the available means of persuasion, especially those means of persuasion that have the most public currency.
And what happens, I think, with multimodality, for the composer then, as soon as you step outside or conceive of a project outside of the written page in this kind of traditional form, you risk losing a number of people, a certain section of your audience, just based on the mode alone. So if you start to switch up modes, if you switch to poetry even, for example, switching to that mode, there's so many people who say, I just don't get poetry, it's not for me, they shut off when they see it, so you risk losing that group. If you switch to multimedia and multimodality, if you move to the digital realm, there's a million choices that you can make, from doing something as simple as a hypertext to complex as a Dreamweaver site with code. But the more kind of modes you mix, I think, the more risks you have in losing part of your audience, and how closely you have to tailor your approach to the audience that you want to stay engaged with your piece. And from an audience perspective, approaching a multimodal piece of any kind is going to require that you have a little bit more open mind than just coming to the page, to the traditional page as text. And you don't have to have a background in performance theory to see that those two things are different, or to have to consider the differences between text on the page and the interface between audience and producer. I also think, though, that the multimodality offers so many more dimensions for making meaning. If you think about using all available means in the traditional rhetorical sense, multimodal is the way to go for conveying an effective message, and it's something different, and it's where the field is going. Shh. Don't tell the traditionalists.
Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh? Don't you know I'm loco?